Honestly, this is one of the most comfortable night vision setups I've worn on my head. But what makes these special, as you can probably tell from the video title, is they feature RPO's new NVD-N lens system. These lenses actually cost around the same price as current mil-spec offerings, and they also weigh a lot less. So in today's video, let's go over the whole gauntlet of CHS testing and what makes these lenses so great. So who is RPO? RPO stands for Rochester Precision Optics, and as the namesake says, they're based in Rochester in the States. They're actually a long-time manufacturer of optical systems, especially for night vision, and they've been featured on many night vision builds, including PVS-14 based systems such as this Nocturn goggle over here and this AB goggle. They also make the lenses for one of the most famous goggles out there, used by many special forces in the world, the PVS-31 Alpha. So these guys definitely know lenses. RPO's kind of philosophy is to take the traditional mil-spec PVS-14 system and lighten the load significantly without sacrificing optical qualities and in many cases improving them. So as you can see, this is the same front objective as the RPO 3.0. Nothing has changed, and actually I think that's a good thing. I really like the low profile nature of the front lens of the RPO glass because it reduces a lot of bulk on the nod. And this is not super noticeable when you compare it just like holding it in hand. But when you actually wear these on your head, that extra centimeter or so that you shave off the top of the night vision device makes a pretty huge difference, especially when you start putting accessories on it. So right here, I have something that we're kind of working on right now as I'm making this video. It's going to be these little ND day filters for your nods so you guys can do some day training with them. And the protector with the lens is actually the same height as the standard Noctis lens with no protector. Reducing the profile allows you to add accessories with less sacrifices. And this also counts with the RPO NVG with the CHADs. And as you can see, even with the CHAD on, it's still pretty decently low profile. And this can be seen especially if you were to put the CHAD on the Noctis lens, which makes it quite a tall boy. That short profile is really, really appreciated. In terms of focusing feel and all that stuff, it's nicely knurled, still super easy to turn, works well with both internal stop rings and D-ring collars that more modern goggles use. They also fit a whole suite of standard accessories. As you can see from earlier, the CHAD fits totally fine, as well as our standard Defender series. The ND filter we're working on here uses the same frame as our polycarbonate and glass defenders, so that fits no problem. The nice thing actually about having a small front lens, in addition to its low profile, is going to be if you're using something like a Cody, having that little bit of extra room allows you to fit a thicker or more substantial lens protector there without having to play around with your Cody bracket, which I know could be pretty annoying for all you thermal fusion guys out there. So moving on to the rears, you can see that the RPO NVD-N is going to be a substantial departure from the design of the RPO 3s. And this design actually leads to a much better eye relief and a much more generous eye box than the 3s. The 3s were a bit more sensitive to that. And as you can see, compared to the current Noctis lens offering, it does look a lot more similar to that than it does to its older brother, the RPO 3.0. A huge benefit of the NVD-N is it actually does come with a mil-spec style diopter. These are the diopters it comes with out of box, and they work totally fine. Another benefit of using standard mil-spec pattern diopters is that you can use recorders like the Rec a lot easier without the need of any fancy adapters or shimming. So as you can see, I have a Rec on this katana right here. This fits on, no problem, not budging anywhere, and now you can get some pretty awesome night vision footage. This is contrast with the lightweight diopters that often came with the RPO 3.0 systems. As you can see, the recorder doesn't fit as well here with the lightweight diopter because it has to now clamp on to the jam nut over here instead of onto the entire assembly. It does still work, but there's a bit of a gap, and I have seen these kind of bump off with enough force. RPO has also maintained the spec of the rear lens threads to be consistent with other mil-spec lenses, so you can use things like lens protectors, different kind of filters, especially if you're using green phos tubes, eye cups, DMIS shields for all you boomers out there. And one thing that we're testing on today is going to be the night vision adapter for the camera which fits onto the NVD-N with no issues, as you can see here. A lot of off-spec lenses actually get the thread spec wrong a lot of the times, which makes installing accessories a bit of a pain. So it's really nice that RPO maintains consistency with their lens thread spec so that you can use a whole suite of accessories. All right, so let's get into this lens test. We chose these lenses at random from the ones that we had. We're also going to be using the same tube with the same housing throughout this test, and we're going to be swapping the lenses as we swap around. The camera settings, unless specified, are also all going to be the same. If you guys need to reference any of this stuff, it's going to be in the description down below. So we're starting out our tests with the Hoffman's resolution chart, which is basically like an eye test for your nods. The Hoffman spits out a very fixed amount of light, so you can get unbiased results that are independent of most real-world lighting conditions and environmental factors. The only real conditions I would say that limit the effectiveness of the Hoffman resolution test is actually going to be human error. How well can the tester, myself in this case, focus the entire system, the front and rear lenses of the nod, to the camera? In this case, we took many takes of these videos to get the best looking results. Taking this into account, for any Hoffman test you guys see online, whether it be ours or someone else's, there's always going to be an element of human error. I would consider these lens tests on the Hoffman more of an end-user oriented build test than, let's say, optical engineering oriented. What we're looking for is how well do these lenses perform in an overall system and not in a vacuum. As you can see, the lenses perform very, very well, congruent with Noctis lenses. And this is going to be a very common theme in this video, as both of these lenses have very similar optical qualities, exhibiting great results for resolving fine details even as light levels go down and scintillation or noise increases. Just like any other lenses, as you get into the extreme low light results, you're going to have a loss of detail due to an increase of noise. The night vision device is going to be working a lot harder to try to resolve something, and in these cases, you're going to need some sort of supplemental illumination in real-world environments to resolve any meaningful details. For you guys that are pixel peepers out there, we actually wanted to take this test that we run a step further. Most of our video is going to be in 4K. 4K isn't often good enough to resolve very, very fine details, especially when we get down to these smaller line pairs. So what we did is we took these exact setups, set them up on our A7 IV, which is equipped with a 33 megapixel full frame sensor, to see how well the tubes with this class can resolve the smallest of line pairs. This is going to be far finer than your human eye and phone cameras can resolve. And as you can see, the NVD Next is pretty much on par with the Noctis lens and perhaps even slightly better. The NVD Next actually edges out the Noctis lens, with it being able to resolve Group 5 Element 4 with much more detail than the Noctis lens. Again, realistically, this probably won't make too much of a difference, but it is something to note. The NVD Next is a seriously sharp lens. For our next test, we're going to be testing for static distortion. Because night vision lenses are trying to correct for the curvature of the output screen as well as some zoom into the image, you're always going to get some sort of pin cushion distortion that is often mistaken for fisheye. In this case, the NVD Next is actually very, very well controlled. If you check out some of our previous videos, I always thought the RPOs had a little bit of fall off compared to the Noctis lenses, but in my opinion, the distortion in RPO's newest offering is very comparable to Noctis, and I would say it's pretty much indistinguishable. The next test is a bit hard to convey on camera, but it shows how well the flatness of the image holds up when you're outside of your ideal eye box. Realistically, when we put night vision on our head, we're going to be running around, bumping around, and oftentimes the lenses won't be very centered in front of our eyes. They're actually going to be slightly off. Cheaper lenses will distort or vignette very heavily when you move your eye out of the ideal eye box. If you're using a panning goggle, such as an RPO NVG, panning diashow, or panel bridge, this is even more important so that you can get a usable image when the goggle is panned off axis. The NVD Next maintains a very flat and usable image even when moving. It's very easy to see why Nocturn Industries, for example, chose this lens to make their upcoming Chimera panoramic goggle. Next, we are going to look at how well the lens seals. As you can see, it passes a vacuum test, which means the lens, O-rings, and diopters all seal to a vacuum pressure of -7.5 plus psi. Both lenses passed with flying colors, and both lenses are going to be fine to use in rainy, dusty, and wet conditions. Shout out to all my guys who survived Wet Flag 2025, which was a very, very wet mil-sim event that I was leading this year in Ontario. One of the biggest improvements that RPO has advertised with the Night Vision Next was the increased eye relief, especially compared to their predecessor, the RPO 3.0. The 3.0 was a great lens, but it did have a more sensitive eye box and slightly less eye relief than most mil-spec and comparable offerings. The NVD-N remedies this on orders of magnitude, being able to keep up with the Noctis lenses even at extreme distances, let's say for a gas mask, or for all those guys out there still using those giant goggles. I've used these NVD-Ns with my Avon FM53, and I can say that it's very comfortable to use, and I was able to get most, if not all of the image in my goggle, even with a larger gas mask. The fact that RPO fixed the biggest complaint about their previous lenses and brought these in at a more comparable cost to other competitors without sacrificing its lightweight design is a great step forward in the night vision industry. Some early adopters have said the NVD-N feels a little bit more zoomed out than the Noctis, and in my opinion, it actually is more natural, whereas the Noctis lenses are actually a little bit too zoomed in. This can be easily seen if you use your night vision devices and you look at something close. It often looks a little bit larger than light. The NVD-N, to my eyes, replicated a more true 1x magnification than Noctis lenses. This is hard to capture on camera, but as you can see from this test, we're recording two night vision devices with different lenses. The competitors have a much more dramatic zoom than the NVD-Ns, whereas the NVD-Ns makes the helmet look much more true to size. So let's get into some weight comparisons. I have all the lenses kind of laid out here. It's going to be a pretty wide gamut. So let's start off here with the mil-spec lenses. So these guys, as you can see, are going to weigh about 110, 111 or so grams. And then with the diopter it comes with, it's going to be 126 grams. If you do want to reduce the weight without sacrificing any optical qualities of the mil-spec lens, it's going to be around 118 or so grams with a lightweight diopter housing. Now, RPO has done a really great job in reducing the weight of their lenses because they use a lot of plastic elements. I've heard a lot of criticism that lenses use plastic elements or whatever. Honestly, if you know anything about cameras or lenses, that's not a big deal or a very new revelation. Even a lot of the best camera lenses out there that are used by professional cameras, such as Sony, Nikon, all that stuff, have plastic lens elements inside, and these are much more complicated than night vision lenses. So I would not really worry about plastic elements inside a night vision lens as long as they're done properly. So the RPO 3.0 rear lens is going to be very, very light, weighing at 22 grams, as you can see on this scale. The NVD-N is actually going to be very slightly heavier, weighing at 26, but that's still a really huge difference compared to the all glass elements in the Noctis lens, which is weighing at 58. So as you can see, pretty ginormous difference between the two lenses. With the front lens, the NVD-N is going to weigh 63 grams. And of course, with its included diopter, it's going to weigh a total of 81 grams, which is going to be a lot lighter than the 125-26 of the Noctis lens assembly. If you do want a weight max, you can actually get rid of the standard diopter that it comes with and use the lightweight diopter. And now you're in at a very, very nice 70 grams. Of course, if you're looking for the lightest setup possible with US made lenses, you're going to be using the RPO 3.0 with the front lens assembly, which weighs in nicely at 66 grams with the included eyepiece. So in conclusion, here's what we're looking at. For a full Fujinon/Noctis setup, you're looking at 126 grams. Not too bad. If you were to add something like a Chad to that, which is a very, very popular accessory, you're looking at 156 grams per lens set, times 2 for a bino. If you're looking at an RPO 3.0 lens set with a standard mil-spec diopter, you're looking at 77 grams with a mil-spec diopter, around 66 or so with the lightweight diopter, and with the Chad, that's going to be 107 grams. So even with an accessory, that setup is going to be a lot lighter than a Fuji/Noctis setup. And then with the NVD-N setup, you're looking at something really similar. It's going to be 81 grams with the current mil-spec diopter that the NVD-N comes with. And then with the Chad, you're looking at 112 grams. So why do I bring the Chad into the equation is pretty simple. First off, very, very popular accessory, but also because if you look at the night vision device as an overall system, not just like individual components, going lighter on the lens allows you to add more accessories while reducing your overall kind of base weight, which means that you can have more capabilities for your device with less neck strain. And more time under tubes is always better. Now I have here some example setups that I really enjoy with these lenses, and I'm gonna go over why. So we're gonna start off here with the Tanto, which is the guy that we're using actually for all the testing footage. And what I love about this guy is it's rugged, simple, and super, super light. And the NVD-N makes this goggle even lighter. Honestly, when I have this goggle with NVD-Ns on, sometimes I forget there's even a tube inside. And this guy weighs in at a really pretty 207 grams for a fully functioning monocular, which is insane. You can probably run this guy on a helmet without a counterweight, to be honest, and it would work really well. So this is probably going to be one of the lightest monocular setups out there on the market right now. Moving on from the Tanto into another Nocturn product is going to be one of my other favorites, and that's going to be the Nocturn Industries Katana Molded. And this is an evolution of their older Katana design, and it's one of the lightest and simplest goggles out there. And the NVD enhances this goggle even further than it does normally. So I don't have the weight off the top of my head, but I'm going to put it down here somewhere. There's that weight with mil-spec lenses. And with NVD-Ns, this guy is going to be a sub 500 gram goggle, weighing at 440 grams for a fully functioning binocular on and off switch, CR123 external power, power indicators, pretty Spartan, but has all the features you need. And this guy weighs less than 500 grams in an articulating lightweight package. If you guys are looking at adding accessories to this guy, Chads, Coddies, what have you, to increase the capability of this goggle, the Katana is going to be a great base platform to build your entire night vision setup around. And then finally, I want to get into probably the best use for NVD-Ns, and that's going to be lightening the overall system weight on heavier, more capable or ruggedized goggles. In this case, I have actually my personal goggle here, but it's going to be the AB Night Vision RPO NVG. And as you guys know, the RPO NVG is going to be a heavy girl. She's a pretty heavy goggle, I believe, fully kitted out with Fuji lenses. This guy weighs over 600 grams. However, with NVD-Ns, we're able to drop this full aluminum and panning goggle down to 520 or so grams. So this goggle is actually weighing less than a mil-spec lens Katana, and this goggle is made fully out of aluminum, IR illuminator, and of course, as you guys know, the feature I love, and that works really, really well with the extended eye box of the NVD-Ns, is these guys pan out, giving you much greater field of view. So if you guys do have a heavier aluminum goggle, a lot of the AB products are a little bit heavier because they're much more rugged. Some of the Nocturn stuff that's more rugged, like the Katana R, Manticore R, are going to be a little bit heavier. Things like the Nighthawk are going to be a little bit heavier. All these ruggedized, fully featured goggles, putting NVD-N on them, you get pretty much no optical sacrifices. In some cases, you get optical benefits, and you get a lot lighter of a setup. In many cases, eclipsing the weight of standard lightweight goggles with Noctis lenses. As you can see, guys, spring is in full swing here in Ontario, which is great because we have this fully canopied forest to work with. And for most night vision users, using nods in a fully canopied forest, it's also a partially cloudy day, is going to be one of the most challenging low light environments for night vision. So let's get going. We're here at the classic fork tree that we used for many a CHS night vision test, and the conditions today are going to be challenging for any nod. Again, the results look very similar. Even as we turn the saturation all the way down to look for details, the contrast and transmission are almost identical. If I were to really nitpick this footage in particular, I would say the contrast is slightly better on the Noctis and the brightness is maybe a little bit better on the RPO, but all in all, not too big of a difference. Both lenses are strong performers. So we're at this river bend, which is going to be a bit more illuminated than the forested environments. And what I'm looking for in this test is going to be how well do these lenses resolve detail when you're outside of the center of the image. In this case, I'm using these rocks on the shore of this river. Both of these lenses do a good job at rendering the small details outside of the center. I would say, however, the Noctis is ever so slightly sharper, than the NVD Next. However, the NVD Next strong suit, as we can see from previous tests, is going to be its excellent center resolution. Both lenses are going to be fine, and as with the common theme of this video, if these tests weren't labeled, I probably couldn't tell much of a difference between either of them. So here is some range footage that we took a little while ago with the exact same setup. Here you can see some more apparent differences. If I were to sum it up, I would say NVD-N is going to be brighter, it's going to have better center clarity, and it's going to have slightly less contrast and slightly less edge clarity as a result. The Noctis is the opposite. A little bit more contrast, but darker of an image, a little bit less center clarity, better overall edge clarity. In my opinion, the image differences don't really justify swapping between the two lens systems if you already own one system or the other. In terms of optical performance, both of these are going to serve you very well and are exceptional. Now, one thing that I will note, and you can notice that with the street light behind me, is that the RPOs do flare a little bit differently, and some will say with a little bit more drama than the current Noctis lenses. I don't think that means that the flaring is necessarily unusable or worse. The characteristics of the flare are simply a bit different. When you're actually using these in environments where you do have lots of lights coming in, lots of photonic barriers, stuff like that, you're going to need to kind of find ways to train and work around them as you would with any lens system. Even with the Noctis lenses, you're still going to get washout lens flare elements. They're just not the same because they use different optical designs. Now, through hiking in the forest or doing all these tests, I was wearing these nods. I also had my buddy Eric behind the camera wearing the nods. We noticed that they honestly just feel so much better on your head than having a set of full mil-spec heavier lenses. When you're moving your head around like this, that momentum, that kind of tank-like momentum that you have with nods, it doesn't feel nearly as dramatic with the NVD-Ns. These guys are simply just a lot more comfortable to wear, which in my opinion is going to make a bigger difference than the minutia of the optical qualities of the lenses. In this case, we went to one of our supply closets and turned off all the lights and blacked out any vents. Because night vision does need light to amplify, we put a tiny 5 lumen torch about a meter or so behind the camera and umbrellaed the light into the room. With your naked eye, this room is pitch black, you can't see anything, but with this tiny amount of light, night vision can. To my eyes, it actually looks like the transmission is a bit better with the NVD Next, and this can be seen on the white wall to the right of the shelf, being a little bit brighter on the RPO versus the Noctis. Overall, I would say, however, the images are very, very similar. If you put these in front of me without the names, I likely wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And in these extreme low light areas, like I always say, you're probably going to need some supplemental illumination to really make the most out of your night vision device. So here's a bit more of a realistic environment for indoor use. In this case, we have a basement stairwell. There are some lights on from a fridge and from a basement window, but overall it's too dark to see with the naked eye. We have here our cameraman just running around and acting like an absolute gremlin in the basement. And yes, that's an airsoft gun, so don't worry about any real guns going off here. And we're just checking to see how the image looks. To my eyes, they look very, very similar. It's going to be hard to tell the difference between the two in this more realistic indoor environment. So is the RPO NVD-N going to be the lens system for you? And in all honesty, I really think these are setting a new benchmark when it comes to night vision lenses on the market. The optical qualities are very, very good. In many cases, I can't even really tell the difference between the two. To illustrate this point, I've actually built a katana setup over here that I've been running and testing for a bit that uses NVD-N on one side and Noctis on the other. And to be honest, my brain could fuse these perfectly and they didn't really look too different in my eyes. But I think as night vision nerds, we get caught up a lot in the optics, the tube performance, and all those things. And we forget at the end of the day, these things are tools that you're gonna wear on your head, you're gonna bang around, and you're gonna use. They're substantially lighter than most lenses on the market today, and they have great optical qualities. So these guys can be affixed to any PVS-14 lens compatible system, which includes pretty much all of our binos and monos that we currently have at CHS, and they can be shipped internationally. And again, these guys cost around the same price as current mil-spec lens offerings. So there you have it, guys. RPO NVD-N available here at Cold Harbor Supply, and honestly, a fantastic lens option for all you night vision users out there. Stay safe, everybody.